This device isn't a spaceship. It's a time machine. Goes backwards, forwards. It takes us to a place where we ache to go again. It's not called the wheel. It's called the carousel.
It was the best time of our lives.
That was my old intro music. I had to stop it because there was too much like clips from copyright in there. I'm trying to figure out how to share our stream on Twitter. It's all screwed
Says you're
up.
live.
Well, yeah, but are you able to like?
Let's see here.
Hi, by the way, Philip Richert. How do I say it?
Reichert, but close.
Reichert. There you go. Nice.
Yeah, you're live.
Richert.
Look, there we are.
Sick. I don't think it's hard to share the stream though. I'm just trying to share this. Okay. Well, welcome, Philip. You have a great feed, yeah, very funny, and you've launched a magazine that several people sent me right after you launched it, which is called Junto Magazine. So I want to hear about who you are and what Junto Magazine is. So maybe start with who are you and what's your history? How did you come to this side of Twitter?
Sure. Well, the short of it is I served in the military for a number of years as an intelligence analyst. And following that, I was working for the Space Force as a contractor. And I was set to go work in DC, doing what everyone else does. But my wife wanted to start her PhD, and we are collectively as a couple from the city. So I had to figure out something to do in New York. And
You're from Manhattan. You're from Manhattan.
I personally am not from Manhattan, but as like a marriage unit, we always, we're based out of the city. That's where her family is. We've lived there a couple of times. So, and that's where we met, of course. But I needed to figure out something to do that I was qualified for. And I had no college degree, and all I had ever done was intelligence. So I said, well, this is perfect for working in news and media. So I went to work for Fox News, and that was kind of my boot camp for politics and media, and not necessarily understanding politics, but like sort of working in it and understanding precisely why certain things happen, why certain things get covered. And from that moment on, I just sort of wanted to continue to work in that space because it had a similar magnitude to, when you're working in intelligence, it sort of feels like you're doing something that matters. And politics and media has a sort of similar magnitude to that. So since then, I've worked sort of across the political and media spectrum. And I did that up until fairly recently, where I was hired to create a local media outlet, local media nonprofit in San Antonio. And my father was enrolled in hospice and then later passed. So I had to step back from that. But I took that as an opportunity to start Junto.
Wow. Okay. So, wait, but Junto is not the San Antonio based thing?
It is not.
Okay. So those were different things.
Though I am still involved in that. Hopefully they're going to be able to launch soon. Local media is, of course, a very difficult thing, especially right of center local media.
So I think I've maybe actually caught word of this San Antonio thing you're talking about. So I have also gotten deep into local media.
Good for you.
Yeah. And so I'm also in the business of launching media companies as well. There's another one that I can't say anything about coming soon. So yeah, a lot to talk about here in terms of this type of stuff. You're totally right about local media. Can you say what the San Antonio thing is, or is that like private?
Sure.
Is that different? Okay.
It's not private. What it is. Not private yet. It is functionally a stakeholder in the San Antonio area feels that the existing local media infrastructure is ideologically lacking, and not from the sense of like he's like a hard right conservative, but more so in the sense that if you have local media that trends in the direction that most urban areas trends in, i.e., progressive, it doesn't do a very good job covering certain topics like business. And it doesn't do a good job communicating perhaps what the city should and shouldn't be doing. So he wants to create a counterbalance to existing local media, which I think is great. In Texas, particularly, we have a lot of projects, either independent or new media, that are sort of overtly conservative political projects, and this is not that. It's much more of a business project. And I think that, particularly if you have institutional backing or like moneyed backing, I think that has some runway to work with.
Well, I mean, what I've learned about local media is, are you familiar with pink slime?
Sounds familiar.
So pink slime is this tactic that's been used by Soros and the, vastly better organized left,
right?
For like, I think 2 decades, even maybe a little less, where they just buy up or create shitty local media companies that are kind of just syndicated across key markets. And then when it comes time to, and then they just staff it with some 22-year-old who writes just BS, semi-culture, semi-local. And then when it comes time to shill the talking points of, let's all be gay in, some place in
Let's
Tennessee.
Vote for socialists.
Yeah. Then it's like, oh yeah, we all need to be gay and help the gay, the trans storytellers in Tennessee. And that's like how that stuff happens. And he's been doing that forever because, of course, they're just so much better organized at this stuff than anybody on the right. And so, I think there is an opportunity to match that on the right a little bit. But then again, what are we doing? We're just trailing them around with their tactics forever. So my approach has been to be like, well, let's make it actually, instead of staffing it with complete idiots and just being really shallow, let's make it actually good. Like, let's make it about like actual local culture in a cool way. And I think the right can pick up a lot of those talking points about affordability and shit that seem to be kind of like up for grabs, or restaurants closing. Like that's not necessarily a left-wing thing. Like
it is not. And in fact, they're not good at covering it in a lot of cases.
Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think that circles back to, at some point you have to have somebody that pays. Unfortunately, it's getting better. I'm not like a super huge proponent of AI. I'm also not like a doomer that seems to be favored by the algorithm right now. But it is a huge, for people who have some sort of domain expertise and know what they're doing, it is a huge force multiplier. And I think there is an opportunity through both technology and a sort of cultural shift that we're having right now. You could conceivably have some local media projects that make a difference. But again, like in this specific scenario, you're talking about like somebody who recognized the problem, who had resources, who could then, put together a project and go out and find somebody who could hire somebody who has a very specific skill set. And he was hiring for a couple of years. So it's not easy, but I think it is still doable. Like what we have seen in Texas, the more politically, the super conservative political projects that happen to also be media, those are more successful, obviously, because they can like latch on to the culture war and things like that. But when you're talking about just being good at news and not being overtly leftist, that's a lot harder. Particularly when the competition, the leftist media, that's like a jobs program really for people of a certain disposition.
Yeah, totally. So, what are you said you come from intelligence. So like,
that's right.
what does that exactly mean?
Well, it means a lot of different things depending on where you are. I was in the Army. So Army intelligence looks very little like what you would see or expect when you hear the word intelligence, i.e. like the show Jack Ryan, which is already a dramatization. But I was in the Army working as an intelligence analyst for 3 years before they sent me to West Point. And the very first assignment I had was an operational sort of a slightly higher level assignment in Korea. So we were working on the Korean picture. Following that assignment, which I held for a year, I was at a standard Army unit. It was a cavalry unit in an infantry division. So once you get to that point, it's functionally not even what people would recognize as intelligence anymore. And in fact, most of your day to day is just soldier tasks like cleaning or doing paperwork. So while I did over 3 years learn some things that are directly related to intelligence and then adjacent to intelligence, it's sort of like if someone was just a low level analyst for like 4 years, you're not going to go out and, I mean, you may call them a Fed and probably should call them a Fed, but that's not somebody who is like, dealing with anything particularly high stakes. And it doesn't necessarily, like, there's a joke I have where it's the butterfly meme, the guy looking at a butterfly, and it's relatively mediocre military career, and he says, "Is this a foreign policy credential?" Sort of like that. It's like it's nothing. I mean, it could be, you could make it something, but it is not inherently valuable for anything tangible.
Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So how has that informed your forays into media, doing Army
Sure.
intelligence?
Well, I thought initially, I said, what is analogous to intelligence in the private sector? And I thought that news media would be analogous to intelligence because it is intelligence for a different audience, right? You're just communicating information typically found by an analyst or a human source journalist, and you're taking it and communicating it to the public. However, that is analogous in some outlets or with some journalists, and then of course not so much with others. Like at Fox, it was more about just presenting the appropriate viewpoints and then having on the right guests for 24 hours. And then at the end of the 24-hour period, you sort of reset and go from there. So it was not, looking into information and stuff that is sort of foundational skills for intelligence is useful for media. But at Fox specifically, I did not find it particularly valuable. Although when I first started working there, we had the pleasure of the Ukraine war breaking out again in force, and I was the military guy. So I got every military guest, and I had to be like, "Hey, that's not a tank," all over the production team. So, there was some applicability, but it was not like,
what is not a tank? What do people think is a tank?
I mean, if it's actually I think it might even be a joke. There might be like a Reddit or an Instagram or a Twitter or something pointing out like news anchors seeing like armored personnel carriers or like mine clearing vehicles and calling them a tank. Or maybe it's a meme, but that could be important. Like, actually, one of the times that I pointed this out, I think Brett Baer was like the guy with the map or something. That was like his job at the time. And he was talking about the tanks, of which there weren't. And they weren't tanks, but they were mine clearing vehicles. But a mine clearing vehicle, to my mind, is actually potentially more indicative of offensive operations than a tank. So that is something that you might want to be aware of, on top of the fact you don't want people to make fun of you more than they already are for saying it's a tank.
Yeah. Well, and so where was their reporting at with is it true? I see these pictures of Ukraine and it's like a field, and in the field it looks like it's like spider webs, like cobwebs,
crisscross of the fiber optic cable.
See. Yeah. And which is like, supposedly these are fiber optic cables that are to stop drones. Is that, it's like a blanket to stop them? Is that what that is? Is it really true that this is the dawn of drone warfare in Ukraine?
I think so. Well, I think that your final statement, I think that's certainly true. And I don't know if this is necessarily a good metric to use, but when I'll give you the example of like American dynamism and reindustrialization, which is sort of a trend, right? People say that a lot, but until you start to see like the money move, and you would start to see like funds raised in pursuit of it and projects funded because of it, I think it is more of a leading indicator than anything else. And you do see that with drone warfare. Like, I think there was that really famous operation they did where like drones rose out. It might have been in Iran actually with Israel, where like drones rose out of a cargo container that they left in the middle of the desert. So I mean, the people I know who work on drones, they obviously sell the cost basis versus like any other kind of platform. And that's a particularly difficult argument to argue against. I mean, they are, or can be, I should say, much cheaper than like putting a guy there. And from everything we've seen, the combat footage in Ukraine, which I don't watch, I did when the war broke out, but it grew, the Twitter spaces and everything, it grew so full of like armchair OSINT guys, which can be great, and they could be more knowledgeable than professionals. But it became like a big dick measuring contest that I just didn't really want to participate in anymore, and it was kind of exhausting. But from the footage I have seen, it certainly seems that way. As I understand it, the fiber optic cables are for maintaining communications in spite of electromagnetic interference. So if they're jamming, you have a physical connection. It's the same thing with the Tau missile, the tank or the APC fired missile that is in the Bradleys. It has a little fiber optic spool that runs behind the missile, so you can guide it.
Got it.
I think
so
that's what that is.
That's what those are. So the cobwebs that we see, like the horrifying cobwebs we see, like in the sun, glinting over the cornfields of wheat fields. I guess they don't have corn there, do they? Of Ukraine is those are actually the like tails of drones that have already like flown over. Those aren't to stop the drones.
It's possible. I mean, it is possible. There is like a fiber optic net technology that I'm not aware of, but my understanding of it was they were using. I mean, it should be a cheap and easy solution to jamming, to have a fiber optic control cable that just follows the drone. I could see why they would do that, and that I've read that from people who pay attention to this stuff a lot more than me. So it would be indicative of prolific drone use for sure when you see those fields of the just basically fiber optics glass covering the agricultural fields. That's I would say that's probably indicative of just a ton of drones going back and forth.
Wow, crazy! It's crazy to think that that's where we're headed. Do you think we're ever going to get our generation's war? You know,
this is a good question. Yeah, I mean that's why like everyone I know. Well, it depends on what generation you are, but most of the people I know, because we get lumped in like the early war in Iraq and Afghanistan versus like in the teens, we all wanted to fight. Like everyone enlists to fight, and I remember wanting to go. I mean, in a sort of nerdy intellectual way that didn't control me in any meaningful way. It was like it would be cool to go to Afghanistan because that's like history's battlefield, stuff like that. But we're getting really good at these like good is probably the wrong word, but we're tending towards these like low intensity conflicts like the United States. And now when you have a situation where we can go black bag Maduro in the night with the discombobulator, it raises the question of, what is warfare going to look like? Are we ever going to have mass warfare? And truly the only country that we would have our war with is China, right? Someone who can match our numbers and our industrial output, meager as it may be in some places, and that would be China. I mean, if the European Union grew autocratic and hated us for whatever reason, I guess that could count too. But China is the one, and that would also look different. I don't know. Would we be island hopping, or would we just be bombing the hell out of them with remote weapons like we do everywhere else? I don't know. So probably not.
Yeah, is it ever going to actually like bubble over? I mean, I think it has to. What's the discombobulator? Sure. I think I know, but what is it?
The reference that Trump used when I guess it's some kind of pulse weapon.
Yeah,
that is used to I don't know if it's vertigo or if it's something else, microwaves, which would make it ironically very similar to the Havana syndrome weapon. But the tool used to discombobulate, to disorientate the defending forces in Venezuela, he refers to it as the discombobulator, which I think is great branding, really.
Wow. So right, it's some sort of like pulse weapon. Because yeah, I heard a
Yeah.
account from on the ground where it was a guy who was like, we were
Was it
immediately.
the viral thing?
Yeah, was that
I don't know
fake?
how
Was
much
that
I
real?
believe it, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's we do have I mean, the weapon or the system behind the Havana syndrome, which I guess is going through something of people don't know if it's real anymore or not, or they never did. I mean, that was, by my understanding, just like microwave pulse technology, which they had, like Cuba had it very early on. So I would be surprised if we don't have some like black box skunkworks stuff that can just totally make somebody. Even riot control technology here in the United States, they have these giant satellite dishes that can disorientate people. So I wouldn't be shocked if we had like a Black Hawk that has a big dish underneath that can just totally disorientate a defending force. That would be
Wow.
within the bounds of reality for sure. And with
That
all the
is like
crap that Anduril and stuff are working on, they have to have some crazy shit.
that just seems like so much more powerful than people give it credit for. Because if you really truly can do that, if you really truly can discombobulate people in that
Mhm.
way, isn't that like, I mean, almost like an all powerful force? Like if you can literally just like zap people's brains from the sky and make it so they can't do anything, that seems impossible to me. Like, how could that actually be real? Because isn't that like
Sure.
you could literally do anything? You could then,
Yeah.
whatever you want to do, you could just go do it like immediately.
Well, I mean, look at the I have to think back to what's public and what's not public on this, but look at the like early reporting for the Havana syndrome, right?
Yeah.
It was purported to be, our diplomats and I guess spies and working in these somewhat sensitive areas or areas prone to sabotage. And the idea was that they were aiming like electromagnetic weaponry at where they were working, and that is not necessarily a new idea. So I think it would. Nobody that I know has seen the discombobulator and like told the tale. So it depends on what it is. If it's a big trailer that they have to wheel around, like the riot control technology, then obviously that's a lot more limited than the rod of God or whatever, where you can just totally ruin a building, at will. But if they do have something, and it would seem to be that way, unless it's all just a big influence op anyway, or information operation, and there is no discombobulator, then I wouldn't be surprised if they could just fly it overhead.
Yeah. So, wow. I always thought Havana syndrome was just like female hysteria of like, I
Well,
thought that that's what it was.
I mean, I
It
think
was like
the earliest reporting that I've ever seen
long
on it
COVID.
was
It was basically long COVID for
sure.
women, women in
For
the
long
military.
COVID for diplomats, that sounds about right. Those weenies over at the State Department. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, the earliest and only, I think, like credible public investigation on it. And I guess it is possible. I don't keep up on it, but I think it is possible that the state or somebody released like a declassified briefing on it.
Mhm.
And I've always understood it to be something like an electromagnetic spectrum weapon.
Mm,
I was
mhm.
just aimed at people. And I mean, it is within the bounds of credible science that you could do that. So that checks my sort of uh, makes sense test to me.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's I think that was the debate was, are these people being for real, or is this like the early skepticism of PTSD
Yeah,
type
right,
thing?
right, right.
I don't know. I think it's real. I think the wacky stuff that the Soviet Union came up with, and then later Russia, of course, they would try to weaponize something like that.
Yeah. So, what do you think about PTSD? It's funny. I just
Mhm.
watched in the theater. I watched Apocalypse Now last night in the theater. So this is a good time to
Good,
talk about
good
this.
time to do that. Yeah.
My all-time favorite film. But what do you think about PTSD? Do you think that that's um, is that sort of pathologization of a normal
Mhm.
condition, or what do you think about that?
I have I mean, I have multiple close family members with really intense mental health issues. So I probably have a different perspective on this than others. But I tend to have a more resilient perspective on mental health in that, like, in a lot of cases, like some people, if your life is just shitty, that's not depression. That would be one
Yes.
perspective that I have. And if you've gone through something that's just utterly devastating, a friend of mine who, I don't know if you've had him on this podcast or not, but Braxton McCoy
Yeah,
wrote
I
a
have
book
actually.
about that. When, I mean, his story is, I mean, obviously he was like, oh, depressed or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're depressed. You got your shins blown off and you couldn't walk for 4 years. Of
Yeah.
course.
Right.
And now
Yeah.
is that clinical? And maybe a psychiatrist would say you have met this, the DSM parameters for so long that clinically you could be diagnosed with something. But then there's also just like housewife depression, and it's like, how do you get into it? I personally believe we understand so little about the brain, unless in the most absolutely clear cut cases of someone just being destroyed by a traumatic event, that does it really matter? Like, unless the diagnosis like really matters to you as a person, I think you just have to try and find ways to keep going with your life. That's not what a
Yeah.
psychiatrist would say, but that's how I feel about mental health in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like my biggest regret in life by far is that I will probably die without having ever like gone to a battle, right? Like I feel like that's
That's right.
such a hugely missed opportunity. Just as like
In what way
a
do you feel
man
like
in the world, you know
like
what I
a
mean?
manly?
Yeah,
I,
it's
I
like
have to
yeah, as he says in Apocalypse Now, you're not going to find out who you are working at some
until
factory in Ohio. You know, it's
right.
like you're not going to find out who you are working some fucking email job, which is what I've been set up for in my life. You know, I mean,
Sure.
I have been set up to uh work behind a computer, and it's
Mhm.
like that's fine. It's fucking like I have no frame of reference to understand what it would be like to be in actual war, but I do feel like there's definitely something missing as a man who has never seen battle at all.
Sure.
You know, like I
Yeah.
mean, it's like not that you have to have, and again, it's not my fault. You know, I mean, I guess I
Mhm.
could have joined the global war on terror. I did kind of try to be a JAG a little bit because I went to law school and it didn't work. They rejected me. I don't even think they rejected me. I think I didn't even like get to the interview process or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's just also I come from the lefty background. Like, I mean, I was
Sure.
never, I was never gonna. It would have been so hard for me to like do that. But I do deep down want there to be a war and for me to go get called up to go be in it. Like I will
Yeah.
be. I want that to happen. I really do because I want to like find out like what's it like. And yeah, of course, this is
Mhm.
insane. I'm a father. I shouldn't want
Yep.
this, but I
Right.
do. Sorry.
No, I
So
think that's a very primal need for a lot of people, and I think
yeah,
honestly, I think it's much more understandable to have that than not have that. But then I'll give you a story from my time. Obviously, when I dropped out of college to join the army because I was tired of introductory classes at a state school. And my father was like, well, you can do this, but you have to make it useful, which is why I wasn't an idiot and I didn't join as like an infantryman or something. So I went in intelligence. But when I was getting ready to leave, I was encouraged rather to apply to go to West Point as a cadet from enlisted life. And I got accepted and I made the decision to go. And right after that, we found out that we were going to Kuwait, which is, whatever, you're going to Kuwait. But then, like 2 weeks later, I find out that certain members of our team were going to go to Syria and to Iraq and do key leader engagement and do security for special forces and stuff like that. And I was like, shit, this is why I would even be going to West Point in the first. Like, this is
right.
what you're doing this for, and I just passed it up. So I then, of course, had the great experience of having to pick like the best guy from our intel section was going to go do one of these assignments. So I had to find the guy. Then it was like, okay, you made your choice. Now pick your replacement, kind of deal. And I picked my guy, and he went to Iraq and he killed himself in Iraq. So here I am at West Point.
Damn.
I served for 3 years to serve, right, for Call of Duty. I didn't get to do anything other than go to Korea and do some cool intel stuff. And then when I finally have the opportunity to do that, instead I went to West Point and the guy I picked killed himself. And I don't know if that's like a pretty good it's obviously specifically or directionally it's probably applicable to I think what a lot of people felt with the GWAT and the sort of ensuing conflict. Like my bunkmate at West Point was an infantryman who had just come back from Afghanistan. And he spent the whole time there doing like things that could have resulted in combat but never did. And they were replaced by like a National Guard artillery unit. And as they were being replaced, the artillery unit ended up getting in a lot of, firefights, and he never got to do it. So he had sort of the same situation, except in reverse. He never got to actually have that experience. And the guy's like, now I'm happy with my choices and I'm happy with my life and everything. And he is too. He's an investment banker down in Miami. So, of course he hates himself. But like we have those like what ifs. And I think so many people, probably the majority of people who served have those. But it's probably better than the what if of had I not served. So
right. No, well, yeah, at least you did what you could. So wait, who was the guy ahead of you who killed himself? Like, what do you know why he did it?
So he was just a really good kid, man. He was from Idaho, and at the time, which is ironic because Braxton's from Idaho. Maybe weak people come from Idaho. Who knows? I'll send that to him. I don't know. He was really like jovial and a very humorous person. I never experienced with him any signs of mental health problems. And I was like, for the very first 6 to 12 months that he was at our unit, I was his team leader. So I interacted with him probably more than anyone. Like I helped him put together all of his gear. I took him out to eat. He didn't have a car, so I drove him a lot at the beginning. And he was just a normal kid. But I think what happens is over time, as you are like in garrison, and this is definitely true on deployment too, but in garrison, it gets really frustrating when you're not doing anything that feels productive. And I think if you have any underlying health, like mental health issues, they can really be augmented by that experience. And that must have happened to him because, I've now, my mother was severely mentally ill. I was not, a novice at that, and I didn't detect anything in him. It was a very difficult thing to hear about. Like, we have guys like you find out your old drill sergeant died. Like you hear that all the time. And like my my squad leader in Korea, who I was very close with, I found out he died of like regular health problems. But nothing hits quite like the guy who you didn't see anything wrong with, and then he kills himself.
Yeah, that's so crazy. Like to not see it at all. That's
the story is he did it too with a knife, which is
God.
Yeah, it's like that's. I mean, it's almost incredulous. I don't understand that. People don't kill themselves with knives unless they're like schizophrenic or something. So it's a very tough situation. But I mean, yeah, everyone has problems with it. Nobody really comes out on the other side like perfect, I guess. So that's my story, and it's obviously almost nothing compared to what other people have dealt with. Like I was an intel guy.
Right, exactly. So what did he actually see though? Like what was, you know what I mean? Like what do you know?
You mean when he was over there?
Yeah. Like what?
Oh, he wasn't doing it. He was doing key leader engagement. So he was going around with like a captain or something and maybe a couple other guys, and they were talking to like elders or like government people, like local government. And the value of that, who knows? When it first happened, I thought it could be green on blue, like the Iraqis killed him or something like that, and it was being investigated as a suicide. But I'm not the family, so I never heard anything. The family, I think, received the results of whatever investigation, and everyone in our I was already at West Point, so I wasn't like in the unit anymore. But the friends I still had in the unit, everyone treated it like I should have been there more for him. I should have noticed signs was their reaction. So I tend to believe the mental health picture of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, how was West Point? And we will talk about the
Oh man.
magazine. Sorry, I'm just curious about your history. So, but we'll talk
Yeah.
about Junto in a second here. But what's West Point like in today's world? You're very young, I think, right? So
I'm
this is like,
29. I
oh, okay,
was
not that young.
I was 20. I was like one of the dozen oldest guys there,
Oh,
obviously,
wow. Okay.
because I mean most of like 99% of the people are kids out of high school.
Yeah.
And now I never, in fact, I didn't want to go to West Point really anymore. When I was a kid, I always wanted to go to West Point. I saw my TV. I was one of those guys with like the military channel on a lot.
Mm.
So I had this probably romantic view of duty, romantic view of the institutions of the armed forces and West Point and stuff like that. So I had the opportunity to apply for it. Our first sergeant at the time comes up and he's like, "Hey, you should apply to do this thing." And I did, and I went through with the process, which was like very, counterintuitive and dense and whatever. But I had basically been told, and this is true, that if you're not retarded in your active duty, you will get a spot. They reserve a certain amount of spots every year for active duty, and not enough people, or even like National Guard and Reserve guys, and not enough people apply. So I sort of intuitively knew that I was going to go if I applied, and I did. And I was in the middle of a briefing. We were in an exercise. I was briefing like whatever the hell was going on with the enemy to a room full of our unit, and then my commander opens the door and is like, "Reichert, I need you," and he pulls me out. And standing there is the battalion commander and the brigade commander, and I'm like, "Ah, hell." And they're like, "You got into West Point." I'm on the phone with like the admissions guy right now, and he says you just need to go take trigonometry or whatever before you go. So we're sending you right now to the learning center to enroll in it. So I was like begrudgingly and half excited, half like felt like I couldn't say no in the moment. I went, and I wanted to give it a chance. I wanted to like it. The like woke criticism, I didn't know what woke was. I was completely apolitical when I was intel. I thought that's what you're supposed to do. I didn't
Mhm.
know what woke was. I didn't know like the pervasiveness of leftism. I didn't know what I was supposed to hate and what I wasn't supposed to hate. So there was some of that. It wasn't like bad, but I think the clearest sign of that I noticed was when I was there. I was there for a year, and I threatened to leave after the first semester, and they convinced me to stay. And then I did. I was like, "All right, we're gone after the second semester."
Mm.
Um, they I had basically three metrics. When I was there, I didn't improve as a student, I didn't improve as a leader and a soldier, and I didn't improve as a person. And so I sort of was keeping that in mind the whole time I was there, because bear in mind, it's 4 years at West Point, and then you have a 5-year service obligation. And then if you are a certain branch like aviation, you might have to have a service obligation extension. So, like, even right now, if I had stayed at West Point, I would be probably picking up captain right now. So
Mhm.
I've had 6 years or however long it's been in the private sector, and I would still be a know nothing, career soldier.
Yeah, so it just felt not necessarily woke, but just sort of like bureaucratic
There were
and annoying.
signs.
Yeah.
There were signs. They brought in this West Coast, one of the California schools lecturer from Vietnam to talk about oppression at one point.
Oof.
And
Yuck.
I we sort of collectively were like, this is gay. Like that's just sort of but I remember one thing happened. We had this app called, it was like Yodel or Yik Yak or something, and it's like a hyper local
Yeah.
anonymous messaging board. And one of my God save me, one of my like company mates stood up, black girl, and she said like, how do we she to this like basically a diversity professor, like his whole study area was like oppression and stuff, and she was like, how do we like persist in an institution of oppression, implying that like West Point and the army was this. And everyone was like, who the fuck? Oh God, I know her. Like, and then but one thing that did happen that was interesting, and I know this guy on Twitter, I can send it to you later. Um, Somebody like Freedom of Information acted all of the admissions data. And they
Mm.
found that like a white Asian male was like 25% better than a white male, and like 50% better or something crazy than like a black female. And they had a breakdown by gender and by race. And it became this huge thing. Like people on this anonymous app were going like, why were my friends denied with similar stats as me? And then this girl, like, you walk up to somebody, she's a Asian female or a black female, and that person's stats are lower than yours. So it became this very interesting case study of like the culture war that I was completely, I mentally, innately, I was like, it's all stupid. Like, of course there's like diversity quotas and all that, but I got to like live it, and it was very interesting to watch that play out. Of course, they also sent the administrators in front of Congress for sexual assault, and I wrote a letter to the superintendent saying, if you want people to stop breaking the rules, you have to start like enforcing the rules. And my whole company was like, you can't do that. You can't enforce the rules. Like, I was like, there are 3 pillars and one of them's character, but we only focus on 2 of them. So why don't we start focusing on character? And they didn't like that either. So there were signs that like leftism and wokeness and stuff was there. But at the time, I just thought it was because West Point was stupid.
I had another guy on this podcast who did a whole analysis of what happened to VMI, Virginia Military Institute.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he dug up was like the old cadets pledge and then the new cadets pledge.
Was it like wokeified? What was
and it was like completely hollowed out and wokeified.
Oh, man.
Like before it was like, you are a gentleman. You walk women home at night and you guard their honor. You do not swear. It was like all these like really like old school, like gentlemanly things. And the new one was just like, you fight for justice and empathy for all. It was like completely longhoused.
Well, I'll tell you the biggest change that I have is my college guidance my guidance counselor in high school was a former Army colonel who went to West Point, and he was in the class with the first female cadet. And when she was enrolled, they took everything in her room and they put it in the bathroom. Like that was just one of the things, like all of her furniture and everything. They're like, all right, here's your room. And he just like told me this. And this is like at a high school. He's like, oh, haha, crazy kids. We pulled this prank, and it was like, we hazed the shit out of this girl because she's a girl. And then when I was there, my platoon leader at the time, which is like the equivalent of a lieutenant position, but it was just an upperclassman, she was given a free fall spot, like a military free fall school spot, which is like one of the more sought after. Like there are some like really cool guy classes you can do. Like you can go to dive school. That's people want to go to dive school. People want to go to sapper. Most ranger is like you can go if you really want to, kind of thing. But people want it. Or you want to go to selection for special forces or whatever. But free fall school is where they teach basically operators how to skydive militarily. So it's like a really cool guy. And it gives you like the ability to do that in your job, right? Like you need to have the credential to go be a military parachutist. And they gave her, who was branching as an armor officer, she was going to be a tank commander. They gave her a free fall spot. So there was no reason to do that whatsoever, other than either, she was appreciated by senior leadership or she was a woman, and it was like a diversity thing. So we went from, in the span of basically a generation, we went from taking all of the women's furniture and putting it in the bathroom to giving them slots that, we had dudes, like there was a guy from Ranger Regiment that was in West Point at the time, like guy who deployed, he had a combat infantryman badge. And they gave something like that to her. Like there's talent available to give this to. So it's quite a change. Obviously, I think most reasonable people would say we probably shouldn't be putting all their stuff in the bathroom, but maybe we also probably shouldn't be giving them things that they don't deserve. I don't know.
Well, hazing is good, isn't it? At some level,
it's part of it. It's interesting you brought up VMI because they are not West Point, right? And they know that they're not West Point. So I had a lieutenant who actually went to selection for special forces and did really well, who was from VMI, intelligence lieutenant. And he came from VMI, and all of his talk was like, it was like miserable there because they have to compensate for the fact that they are not the service academy.
Yeah.
So to go from VMI, which was really hardcore, to a sort of watered down version of that, I think is very damaging institutionally.
Interesting. So you're saying West Point is more watered down than VMI because they don't have anything to prove, kind of. Is that
I
what
would
you're
have
saying?
to. I haven't experienced VMI, so I don't want
Yeah.
to like speak in absolutes. But I
Yeah.
mean, I'll give you an example. Every Thursday when we were in the field or not, they would serve us steak. So we would be out at a field problem. We'd be out in the woods, and they'd be like, "All right, here's your hot steak." And I remember as when I was in like cadet basic training, which was obviously for somebody who's done the real version and been in the army, it was like nothing for me. But when I was standing next to my buddy who became my roommate, the infantry guy, and we are like, steak in the field. This is all right. This is a choice. And I remember like before I left, I think when I went to Columbia University after, I wrote for my writing class, like an op-ed or something for a final project about how like, I think with like 50 grand in my backyard, I could run a more developmental school than West Point, which is obviously an exaggeration, but a lot of the value in an experience like that is in the suffering. Like, when you go to buds, when you go to SEAL, selection, the value is not that you're learning how to carry boats, right? Obviously, it's not that at all. And if you have an experience like West Point where you're taking what is effectively coddled young kids, you need to have a genuine like gatekeeping function for them.
Right.
And maybe not to the point where they're pushed out, because as we found, it's impossible to push people out, but something where they actually experience adversity at some point. So it's not when they're in combat or wherever, when they're behind their desk, the first adversity they experience shouldn't totally shut them down. And that was not something I experienced while I was there at all.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. This is, by the way, what the movie Apocalypse Now is 100% about.
Yep.
Is literally this exact conversation. Wait, so you went to Columbia. Are you in New York now, or are you in?
I'm in Austin.
You're in Austin. Okay. Wow.
I probably should have given you a more, substantive introduction, but my wife just wrapping up her graduate degree at UT. She's an oil lady.
Oh, there we go. Nice. So, all right. So you have started this magazine called Junto, which several people sent me. So what is this thing? It's a Substack. What's the point of it? I think you put out like a call for writers. So, you got Christopher Brunetti in here.
Yep.
So what is this thing? Are you looking for writers? What should people know about this?
People say all the time, in the same way that they'll say like, why do we need another podcast? Which I can sympathize with, or something like that. People say a lot that, right-wing media is crowded and, we have too many media projects, too many outlets, whatever. One thing that I see I say the right, I only pay attention to the right. I used to be a good noodle and I would read leftist media to understand better their arguments and all that crap. I don't do that as much anymore because I'm not like actively working in politics like I was. But what I see in the right a lot is we're getting very siloed, mostly algorithmically with our thinking. But, I have friends from every silo. I have friends from across the spectrum of conservative thought, and I'm friends with them, I believe, because I think they're smart and they have some good ideas. But what we're not really doing very well is having those debates in a substantive manner beyond just like potentially dunking on each other on Twitter or being in the replies. And I think that's problematic for a few reasons, but the sort of main thesis being we go through periods of consensus and challenging the consensus, right, in a political movement. And normally this is like a sort of generational project. But right now that's being sped up by technology and by social media and digital media, new media, independent media. And what we have is like old guard defending the status quo because they're responsible for it, and like new guard being resentful. We have a bunch of, I think, counterproductive tendencies for all of the different silos. And what I really want to see, idealistically for sure, good business idea, probably not, but what I really want to see is more people from across the political spectrum within conservatism sort of come together and have substantive debate in a recorded format where readers you could make the argument that they're smarter than we give them credit for, can pick a winner or like digest the material a little bit and maybe come away with something substantive. They're not necessarily confirming their priors. They're not necessarily just dunking on what they don't believe on. It's a little more forced intellectualism. And there probably isn't a ton of audience for this, but at a minimum, what we can do is we can take people who would, Christopher Burnett is not going to be published in National Review. He's just not going to, they're not going to take him. National Review has a standard which they hold for a more establishment conservatism, just like, The Blaze is a little more new, right? Just like anonymous posters on Twitter are going to be a lot more reflective of the new right. What I would like to see is some place where all of that lives together. And hopefully we can have from that either the consensus and challenge gets smarter or faster or something to that effect, or at least we can all be a little more aware of what we all believe.
Right.
I mean,
so like a little more open, a
ahead.
little less exclusive.
Oh yeah.
A little more like willing to be edgy and willing to like go there.
Well, I don't think the value is being edgy necessarily. Well, what is edgy? Edgy is heterodox, I guess. It's that there are people who are very serious about what they believe and what they think and have explored it a lot more substantively, that would have ideas considered edgy that the mainstream would outright dismiss because of one reason or another. And I think that the problem is that outright dismissal, because we're literally living through this right now with like Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes and people across the new right and leaking chats to Politico. Like all of this stuff is this playing out in real time, and we would be much better.
Is what playing out in real time? Is what's this?
This like dismissal of substantive ideas.
I see. Got it. Okay.
And in some cases, yes, they're just crazy or they're operating in bad faith or whatever. But even if they are operating in bad faith, if people believe that, you're not going to convince them by gatekeeping them or yelling at them or advocating on top of them or anything like that. People have to come to their own conclusions, and they're not going to do that if their information algorithmic silos are totally distinct and they never interact with each other unless as adversaries. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
I happen to believe, again, idealistically, that the best idea should probably win. But if you have to go out and curate a feed of people from across the spectrum, a lot of people aren't going to do that. So we should have it in one place.
Right. Okay. So what's the range then? Like, first of all, what is Junto? Why is it called that? And then what is the range that you want to go? Who would you publish and who would you not publish?
It would be a very serious consideration to not publish somebody, as long as I try to look at the idea. And the idea gets problematic when you have people like, say, in the new right, where they write deliberately provocative and they write, like, I'll give you an example. Jay Burden, who I'm sure you know, has a piece coming out with us tomorrow. And in the title of his piece, as he submitted it, included the word rape, right? I moved that to the subtitle, not because it's like too edgy or whatever, but because I don't want to get
not because
SEO
you're against
blocked.
rape, but
right?
Yeah. No.
no. There are good people on both sides.
Everybody can agree rape is good, but
right.
No.
But again, like you have to be substantive when you advance an argument. So I moved it to the subtitle so we wouldn't get SEO blocked.
Okay,
and
so you're
Nick
saying
Fuentes,
maybe trolling. What about on the left though? Because I try to think about this in myself all the time too, right? Because I'm a believer in what you're saying. I don't believe. I think deplatforming is the gayest fucking thing ever, and it's like, oh, you platformed this person, and by the way, you get just as much of that from the right as the left, if not more. Yeah, and anybody who's ever said to me, "Don't platform this person," it's like, get the fuck out of here. And it's also a very female thing. I mean, you even look at the like psychological studies that came out recently that say Deplatforming is literally female behavior. It's
Sure. Yeah.
something that women in
Was that Helen Andrews? Was that her?
Somebody came out with some study. Yeah, where like they literally do not tolerate people that are a certain deviation outside of their political grounding. They don't tolerate it. They like don't even they can't even allow it into their like space. They have to just immediately excise it, which is fine. Again, this is not anything against women. It's just that's how their brains work. Our brains work differently, right? But for men, I think like, oh, we can't let this person speak. They can't even talk. You know, that's just the gayest thing in the world to me. And I completely disagree with it. That said, there are people who I wouldn't let in, right? Because like I wouldn't let a trans activist. I wouldn't allow that. I would never publish a trans activist. I would never allow that. I would never. Let's listen to what they have to say. There are limits, right? Even if you want to have no limits, there is some limit. This,
I mean. So this might be a bit of a backtrack before I get to precisely your point just now, but I was on another podcast yesterday talking about this, and you know, I primarily operate in the space of like I'm an institutionalist, and I'm like more strategic in how I think about things. So I get almost more offended when people have like bad strategy or they do things wrong than necessarily the substance of what they're saying sometimes. If they had, look at Fuentes, who is like the current, you know, enemy of institutional conservatism. If they had treated that situation differently when he was like a college student, he would not be who he is today. He would not be as big as he is today. But they sort of made him a totem through their resistance, and it makes it's problematic for me, and it's stupid for me when people. I'm very close with a lot of like institutional Jewish conservatives as well. And I pay close attention to the like anti-Semitism debate or whatever have you. In fact, one of our first pieces was an anonymous piece from someone I met at the Republican Jewish Leadership Conference, or however you want to call it, in Vegas. And, you know, you have to be a realist about what you're doing. If you're trying to combat anti-Semitism and your solution is, well, we just need to fight it harder or something, like your solution is wrapped up in what you've already been doing for years and years and years, that's Einstein's definition of an insanity to me.
Well, I mean, I certainly agree. Wait, so why did you go to the Republican Jewish thing? Are you Jewish?
My wife is Jewish. I am in the process of converting because my daughter is Jewish.
Oh, dude, funny, man.
I'm a baptized Catholic by birth, and I'm in the process of converting to Judaism because my daughter, who is Jewish by birth, should have I don't want to have to explain to her like the particular problems with being Jewish. It's like, good luck, kid. You know, I'm Catholic. I'm good.
Wow. So you're converting. You're about to really go through it. So are you going to go through the hard version or the easy version?
Well, so my wife's family is Reform, which is a vehicle for progressivism.
Yeah.
The Reform Judaism is a vehicle for progressivism. And we've belonged to a number of temples and stuff since we've been married, and I've noticed that just overtly. My daughter goes to a Jewish day school here in Austin, and there's like on some of the doors, there's like Black Lives Matter. I think it's the fist.
So she goes to a Reform one.
It might be a conservative. Like the Jewish institutions outside of New York City and outside of probably LA and Chicago they lean heavily Reform because it's almost like the expansionist version of Judaism. Now we belong in New York City to a conservative temple, and Reform, conservative, Orthodox. If you convert Reform, conservative probably won't consider you Jewish. If you convert conservative, Orthodox probably won't consider you Jewish. I'm converting in a conservative temple, which is like the middle ground.
It's I
wouldn't call it the hard conversion, but it's not like, Reform is like read a book and, whatever.
Right. Totally. Have you heard, there's a school out there called Hadar. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
There's a school in Austin called Hadar that's like, there's all these schools that are popping up that are like reactions from the Jewish community against woke shit, because it's like
Sure.
all their schools have gotten woke, and it's like they're
Yeah.
sending their, teachers to like learn how to fight the Intifada conference wherever. So a lot of Jews have like exited, they're exiting the like traditional private school system.
Yeah. Understandably.
And so there's a bunch of these things kind of like popping up. That's funny, man. Yeah, I'm the reverse. So my daughter, we send our daughter to a Jewish school. I'm Jewish. My mother's Jewish. I'm only half, but my mother's Jewish. So I'm in with the Hasids. So we send our kids to like a very religious school.
Good.
But my daughter is technically not Jewish. So, it's a great problem because she goes around saying, I'm Jewish. And I'm like, you're not actually, you're going to have to get you converted, later on.
I mean, has she been like named or anything? Like done any?
No, we haven't done it. I mean, we have not done any actual. No, I know.
Wow.
No, okay. She has to. We're not going to do any. We're going to do the like Hasidic version. Just because I like those guys. I like the Chabad people.
Right.
But
Chabad is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's actually fairly the one in Texas overall. I think Dallas. Josh Hammer was involved in the one in Dallas getting started and everything.
Chabad is sick, dude. Chabad is so based. It's really great. It's really great.
Anyway, I was at you asked why I was at the conference. I was at the conference because we had this like intra-right debate going on, and I wanted to see what like institutional Jew on the conservative side thought about this, and I was pretty disappointed with. I mean, you're not going to get it. Like, you're not going to get anything substantive from a conference like that. But I was looking for like some hint of knowing what time it was, or like some hint of maybe political realism, and I didn't get it. I mean, it was like Mark Levin yelling about everything is bad, and I'm like, that's great, man, like that, but that's what you've been doing for a really long time.
Well, and look, there's this huge problem. I am completely on board. I think this conversation has been had so many times, and the thing is, there is a lot of people who know what time it is, right? There actually is a lot of Jews, a lot of cool Jews know what time it is, a lot of them, and they are furious and frustrated with this disgusting Robert Kraft blue square bullshit.
Well, of course,
as anybody. And but it's true, there is this issue within the Jewish community of blind fighting. Just like, we are going to fight without, and the reason for that is because there's this refrain in the mind of people like Barry Weiss, who is a trained anti-Semite, right? That's what she is. That's what she spent her entire career doing.
Yes.
There is a training mechanism, just like how there's a training mechanism for whatever Nick Fuentes didn't fall into, right?
Yep.
There's a training mechanism for like the I fight anti-Semitism person. That's like a training thing.
Yeah.
And those people, they have this refrain in their head, which drives me fucking insane when they say this to me, which is, if you ever criticize Jewish behavior, Jewish anything, and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that, or hey, maybe we should try to not constantly show ourselves as victims, right? Or maybe we should not say that everybody in the world is anti-Semitic and hates us, because maybe that's not actually true.
Yeah.
They immediately say, we'll never be able to convince the anti-Semites. Why would you try? They're going to hate us no matter what. So stop trying. They get in your head with this like cult mentality of, if somebody's criticizing you, that means they hate you, and that means you can never convince them otherwise, right? And it's like, that's the problem. This is the problem the Jews have faced for 2,000 years, is they keep getting in the same situation over and over again. And, I do think Israel was a positive development, because it was like, at least they were trying something new, right? I mean, at least it was like a new tactic.
Right.
But they haven't moved forward in their minds. They haven't become strong in their minds. So they're still constantly just thinking everybody's trying to kill me all the time. And it's like, no, you reacting to that is actually causing these problems,
Yes.
So I'm right there with you. But anyway, I don't know how we got on this tangent. Sorry.
Well, I would run into the thing. I would recommend you go read the article
Yeah,
on
wait, I'm
Junto
actually
about this.
looking for it. Which one was it?
It's
Oh,
called
Saving Jewish
Saving Jewish
Conservatism.
Conservatism.
Okay, here we
So
go.
one of
I'm
the
gonna read it.
things I try not to talk on this subject because I understand that as a convert, though I have been functionally living as a Jew for like 6 or 7 years, however long I've been with my wife, um, I do not have the moral authority to talk about stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
this.
you do. Fuck, dude,
Well, hold on.
whatever. They
But
can't fucking tell you anything.
when people, do you know what's her name? Sloan something. She's on Twitter. She's a like Zionist independent journalist who she does anti-Semitism. And you
Yeah,
talk about the training. She was quote tweeted by Vance for
Ah.
doing anti-Semitism at him and stuff like that. And I lost my temper with her once, and I told her like the best thing we could do for like pro-Israel sentiment on Twitter is revoking Twitter access from people like you. And so of course she immediately blocked me, and she said that I was
You're
was
going on
not
the
Jewish.
list. You're going on the list, bro.
I quote, like took a picture of my. She was like, "This it's funny how these people threaten or they say they served in the military when they clearly didn't." And I was just like, "This
Oh
is
my
it.
God.
Like this is the behavior."
They try to build files on you. They try to do this to me several times before they, I think, realized I was Jewish.
Well, but you're evil,
And
of course, right?
it's like they just try to they're like, we're gonna find out some things about you and we're gonna say these negative things. It's so fucking lame, and it's just
Well,
like,
I hope they
oh,
don't write my employer since I employ myself.
yeah. Well, that's the big advantage. It's just such a lame. It's like constantly attacking. When does that ever work? That never works. Just being on the attack all the time, claiming victimhood. It's just it doesn't work for human beings, and it doesn't fucking work for people. And it's like it's time to fucking wake up to this shit. I totally agree. Anyway, every fucking episode becomes about Jews.
Oh, great, lovely.
Yeah.
The last thing I'll say about it is I have a friend who's works in politics, fairly big figure, who's very swept up right now in the anti-Semitism, even though he knows what time it is. Like I've talked to him about things, but he gets like swept up in like anti-Semitism, like so many people do. And what he has been doing recently is looking at all of Tucker's newsletters. And I don't know if you've seen there's like a very specific newsletter Tucker has, which is admittedly like anti-Israel every single day.
Yeah.
Like just a fact it is. And he says like, how do people not see this? Or like on his episodes. And I have to be like, he's like, this is a sign that the audience is explicitly anti-Israel. And I'm like, look, man, like people can be pro-Israel, right? Like a nationalist American on the right can be pro-Israel, but it can be like 41st on their list of priorities. And they just don't give a shit if Tucker says stuff like this.
Exactly.
And that is where I think a lot of the people are, as we engage in this warfare, people's priority for intolerance for all this stuff just moves further and further down. And otherwise, I don't know if you
and the more and more people you try to destroy, it's such a mistake to try to destroy people like Tucker. It's if you want to scare people about anti-Semitism, destroy people who are crazy on the crazy side, not on the middle side. It's the worst tactical decision ever.
Yeah.
It's like if you start calling Tucker an anti-Semite, then everybody now thinks they're an anti-Semite, and you're not gonna scare everybody. Like you're not gonna just scare everyone forever. As soon as people stop caring about you calling them an anti-Semite, all the power evaporates. It's gone. And it's like, what did you do? All you do is made everybody hate you. And now, because you called them all your enemy. Yeah,
it's not a direct parallel with like everything. Obviously, this is a very particular conversation in discourse, but you see it the same way in conservatism across all manner of issues, or even like from an identity perspective. Like when you have people who are clearly like sort of establishment or like maybe leaning never Trump or whatever, and they say like, you are not a conservative. You also have rhino, which is sort of the term used by the other side. And when you get involved in this debate about identity, what you lose, which is what Junto is like trying to address in some ways, is you lose the actual substantive debates about what really matters. I have like a personal blog where I write my thoughts just to like get them out. And one of the things that I talk about is like, it's really important to know like what we is when you're talking about anything, like when you're talking about the conservative coalition or whatever. It's really important to know what we is, not only so you know like who is on your side, but you have to understand the people that you're working with. And a lot of times you're not going to agree on it. It's this stuff sounds like platitudes and like meaningless like everyone knows this. Everyone knows you're not going to get along perfectly with everyone, but for whatever reason we let ourselves get, like you talk about culture war being a toxic discourse or whatever, you let yourself get involved in this identity war and nothing substantive happens from it. You have people getting exiled from polite conservatism and the opposite. And it's just like, can we talk about the issues a little bit, please?
Well, so what is the future of the right? Like, where
Yes.
do you see this going? Do you think that the American right, where is it going to head from now? Because
Well, I think
sorry, go ahead.
I'm not a smart guy. I'm not like a overtly great at predicting.
The Columbia West Point guy.
Well, hang on. I snuck in both of those places. I'm just a guy from Tallahassee. I'm not great at predicting out beyond like what is immediately visible. That's not one of my strengths. In fact, in an effort to like do that, if you look on Junto's website, there's a tab called Intel. I've actually, a side project I have going on is like a data dashboard, which the dashboards themselves are not super useful, but the raw data itself that I have is a little more useful in like trying to track money flows between institutions and funders and things like that. And that is an attempt to try and, probably meaninglessly, but try to predict where things are going. My main like takeaway from like where the right is and where it's going, we have Trump, who is just this symbol. It almost doesn't even matter necessarily what he believes. People support him. He is holding together the coalition through like sheer charismatic leadership. And that doesn't mean he doesn't get criticism like we see when, particularly earlier or I guess later last year, people were really criticizing him for his domestic policy. But you look at everyone under Trump, all of the people that are poised to sort of take over, if you want to call it take over the coalition, but sort of move into the leadership position for the Republican Party. Vance is a very talented politician. Rubio is a very talented politician. DeSantis, I thought, was a very talented politician. His presidential run, left a lot to be desired, but none of these people have like the raw band-aid of charisma to hold everything together like Trump has. Mm-hmm. So we are absolutely poised for a contentious primary, an identity crisis along the lines of, what the Democrats are and have been experiencing for some time. I think the question that remains to be seen is, will the right vote for the top of the ticket? Like we know that the right votes when Trump is on the ballot. That is like an observed phenomenon. But does that also apply if it's Vance at the top of the ticket? Maybe they don't vote in local elections anyway, or state elections, off-cycle elections. But if Vance is at the top of the ticket, what kind of decline in outreach? What kind of decline in voters are we going to get?
But he's also going to pick other people up. But look, beyond politics, right? Politics is whatever. It's a game. Who cares? What is the actual future of the right in terms of identitarianism, in terms of culture, right? These people constantly talk about effing culture, patronage networks. Is any of that ever going to happen, or is this all just bullshit?
Well, I think we have to reconcile first with like the increasing, I mentioned the cycles of consensus. They're getting shorter because of like social media and digitization. And the same thing is happening for like political renewal and like identity for politics and identity for people in general. So are we going to have the same length political cycles that we had in the past to build institutions? Like the Heritage Foundation, which I think that the sort of, I don't know if you want to call it reform or takeover or whatever under Kevin Roberts. That was interesting that it happened, but the Heritage Foundation was built in a time when the political cycles were sort of generational. And we don't have that now. And it is getting harder to predict how that's going to look when people's views are increasingly informed by things that can change on a dime on social media. And the traditional gatekeepers are a lot less useful. The traditional institutions are a lot less useful. In fact, the algorithm and the silos that I talked about, those might be more important as identity forming institutions than the real institutions that we have right now in the future. So
Yeah.
I don't know what that means for like our identity as a movement. It might be just total balkanization and coalitional politics from here on out.
Well, what could we hope for anyway? You know, I mean, it's like to
Mhm.
me, it's like to me, the interesting question is more like, what kind of country are we going to live
Right.
in 2 decades?
Sure.
I think the woke is over, but without war, you know, without getting our war, could we really ever return to some kind of American greatness in the way that we think of it before? And could
Yeah.
we go back? Can we put Pandora's box back together in the sense where an 18-year-old child star is not making $3 million on OnlyFans like
Or more.
that's pretty much hell, right?
Yeah.
Where we
Right.
literally have gay dudes banging each other in the Congress room, right?
Yep.
on camera. That's
Yes.
yeah, I don't think it can really get much worse culturally. I
Sure.
mean, there's still some great things about American culture. Don't get me wrong; it's not total disaster. There's still many hope points and etc.
Yep.
But overall, we live in a completely destroyed, apocalyptic, hedonistic hellscape. And again, it's not like it's miserable. We're not starving to death. You know, I mean, there's a lot of benefits about it. Again, I don't want to say that everything is horrible, but if you are a conservative, it's impossible to look around and not be like, okay, well, we could not have lost worse than this, right? So is there any possible potential way of changing that, especially because this natural mental libtardism is worse on the right in many ways than it is on the left?
Sure.
So, and I think that all the people, you know, I think Yarvin and all this discussion about building real power and what real power
Yeah.
is, I do think it's informed this admin. And I do
Mhm.
think that at least like now people are sort of conscious of how weak the right is. But I kind of go back and forth between it's just not, there's nothing we can do about it, right?
Sure.
Or besides just accelerate. I mean, I
Mhm.
think AI will change things. I think crypto is changing shit.
Yeah.
But I guess politically, is there anything that can be done?
The thing, I think I mean, obviously it's an important question. It's like the question. But the thing that worries me about the question is you have people on the right who, like the sort of traditional institutionalists or whatever, they might even disagree. They aren't willing to admit that they lost necessarily. They might even disagree with the diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
And what worries me is, what if you have a situation where the new right gets the diagnosis correct, but the old right's prescriptions are more effective in solving that diagnosis, and you have a situation where the new right doesn't appreciate the old right's institutions or prescriptions, and the old right doesn't appreciate the diagnosis. So, like, in such a situation, that would imply that like unity is the way forward or something stupid like that. But the we have institutions on the right. We have the ability to change institutions dramatically, as we've seen with heritage, and yet those institutions are also partly responsible for where we are. But at the same time, the left is so successful with their progressive is the like their incremental change of society, and they used similar institutions. So you would have to think that the institutions are part of the answer as well. So I don't have an answer to that question that you asked necessarily, but that is my worry. Like, what if the establishment, their theory of change for the world is more accurate than the new right, even if their diagnosis is wrong. And what if the problem is that we just can't work together? Sounds gay, like, oh, we just need to work together. But that would be my worry.
Interesting. You're saying that like the old conservatives have a better tactics of actually changing stuff, and the new right is better at diagnosing the problem, pretty much.
The one thing that I would really like to see from people on the right, something I would like to see from someone like Ben Shapiro, someone who is undoubtedly really intelligent and has been at the sort of, center of all of this for the formative years of the period we're in now. I would really love to read like an honest, it would never happen, an honest and like really reflective, like what I got wrong. And I would love to read something like that from so many people across the spectrum of conservative thought. Yeah. But there's no incentive for that to happen. And I think that's how we would learn. And all of this goes back to like why I think we need to like have substantive debate more often. Because what if the person who has the right diagnosis is someone completely ostracized from the right? And what if the person who has the solution is like, advancing American freedom, they're done. Like, what? Not saying that Mike Pence's think tank is going to have the solution, but you do have a situation where the discourse is excising certain people from positions of influence because of what they believe.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that anyone has the way forward. Obviously, if they did, then that would be a different situation. But I think
where are you at on Fuentes? What do you think about Fuentes?
Well, I explained to you earlier that I look primarily at like strategy, and it offends me more that people claim to be against Fuentes, which is understandable. Like, I don't blame people for being against Fuentes or his rhetoric or whatever, but they claim to be against Fuentes, and yet it almost seems like they're not even serious about defeating him. It's like, are you really taking this seriously? Are you really attempting to learn from the moment and try and develop something that can properly deal with him? Because if like Fuentes is a product, all Fuentes had to do to get to where he is today is just not let himself die, like as a figure.
Right.
And all he had to do is just not give in, and that's what he did. And here we are. So the idea that you're going to suddenly, like the idea that Rufo is going to come out with a Manhattan.
Oh, he came with, Rufo's big. He got him. He said, and he one time, what was the big like haymaker that Rufo clearly got paid to?
He met with a representative of Peter Thiel in Miami. That was the new thing.
Oh my God. Like not one fucking, like
it was known.
They think they're going to come out.
It was known to some, but it wasn't documented. That was his haymaker. And that sort of thing, I mean, I almost get mad looking at that because it's like, is this really it? Like, is this the best we can do? And I think you have to assume that I don't know Rufo. Weirdly, whenever I try to like reply and like, to Rufo, he always like tries to like dunk on me a little bit. So I've always had like a weird, like, what's going on with Chris Rufo? But you have to think he's smart enough to realize that this is not like catalytic.
He's not smart enough. What Rufo is, without realizing, what Rufo doesn't know this about himself, but it's like, you ever see The Wire? Great fucking show. Really fucking fantastic. You got to watch The Wire. But the end of The Wire, the very last scene is you've gotten to know all these characters for 5 years. It's all about like civic disorganization and, it's, and so you have these like Shakespearean characters. Everybody's like a local police officer or like bureaucrat or gangbanger, and it's all about how they were weaved together and like how the city of Baltimore fails to work at all, right?
So they're like disparate people from all
and so all the characters. And the last episode is all the characters you've gotten to know. There's a montage of them growing into a different character.
Okay.
So like Omar, who's this like you learn to love Omar. He's this assassin basically, who just robs drug dealers. Another kid who you've grown up. There's been a kid like growing this whole time, who's kind of like an outsider, but he's cool. And there's a whole season about the high schools. It's so good, but he like becomes Omar. in the last
Oh, okay.
montage. Yeah, every character grows up into like another character. It's fucking genius. So good.
Mhm.
But Rufo is just in that way. Rufo is becoming the new neocon, you know?
Sure.
Right? It's like, I don't even want to use the word neocon because that's not exactly the right word. It's the new useless right. It's the new toothless right? That's what he's becoming.
Sure.
He's becoming the new
Yep.
right, which is the people who just talk all day long. They talk, and that's it. And they don't actually mean it. They, hire a porn star, marry an illegal immigrant. Who gives a fuck? What is what we stand for actually mean? And
Sure.
they go in there, he's going to completely agree with this and say, "Oh, well, we got the scalp of Claudine Gay," and it's like, okay, where did that get it? What did that fucking do? What did it really do? Did that do anything? It's
with
like,
Fuentes specifically too, with that piece that he did, like, it's like, oh, look at the traction it's getting. It's like, yes, your network is designed to do get a lot of retweets and like trend on Twitter and whatever. That like doesn't necessarily translate to anything meaningful.
No, not at all. And did it make any difference to Fuentes? Did anyone care? Like, no. And again, it doesn't even matter. Like, I'm not anti-Fuentes, to be perfectly honest. I don't think Fuentes is that bad. I don't think he's that. I don't even think he really hates Jews that much. There's people out there who really hate Jews, who are really crazily anti-Semitic. I don't think he's actually one of them. I think he's basically just funny, and willing to say funny shit. I'm not like against Fuentes. That being said, I obviously don't support his policies, and I think his perspective on women, like, look, it's going to make people laugh to hear me saying this, but I think his perspective on women is pretty gross. It's like, come on, man. Like, not every woman, like, go get married, whatever, do your fucking role. You don't have to like hate women like the way he does, but I do think he's he's an absolutely unassailable manifestation of the anger of this generation of young men. And you can never kill that. You can't kill it. It's impossible to kill.
You can't moralize your way out of that. Like
right.
that is self-defeating. It's
like Chris Rufo spending all his fucking time researching some 25-year-old kid who's just hilarious. And like, that's pure neoconism. It's like trying to ban rap. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like parental advisory sticker, Rufo, put it on, and I think Rufo is fundamentally driven by a fear of cool people, like, I think that it bothers him so much that somebody like Fuentes, he's like a Salieri figure. That's how Rufo really, like, he's like, do you know what I'm talking about when I say Salieri?
I can respect that. I mean, are you familiar with, I'm sure you are, the idea that like liberal societies create the conditions with which they destroy themselves?
Yeah, of course.
So I think in a lot of ways, like, conservative gatekeeping creates the conditions with which it destroys the gatekeepers in a cyclical fashion. Mm-hmm. And, it seems to me like we are almost not even the audience for what he did. It's like he's trying to appease institutions. Like he's trying to have
that's
some kind of.
You're right. No, that's true. Yeah.
There's some kind of prestige acknowledgement from institutions, and that's like the old ways. If you like capital O, capital W, it's the old ways. It's like we're moving past that. We have our own institutions now that aren't concrete. Maybe they're digital, and whatever.
We need to Thanos them. The institutions, and he understands that, I think. But like, the institutions just need to be destroyed, and they can be. They're so weak, man. They're so fucking weak, and they can be so easy to destroy. I mean, Musk did it. Musk did a great job of basically Thanosing a lot of it, and he's a great model. We should follow his model probably closely. But anyway, what? Sorry.
I personally think that like you presented with a figure like Fuentes, and my first instinct with something like that is, well, let's understand why he has appeal, And perhaps there's something we can learn from that to better represent our purported constituents rather than, you know, it's almost like everyone is a mercantilist of influence, and they're more worried about any competing ideas taking market share from them than they are anything else. That's a very cynical way of looking at it. I do believe that not a lot, but maybe some of these people are actually principled, but you cannot tell me that there is no war for influence going on, and that is primarily how people look at stuff like this.
The right is sorry, no, keep going. Sorry.
No, you're good. I finished my thought.
The right is just weak. The right and right wing people are weak and shitty in comparison to the left. This is what I've learned. I've been in this scene for like 5 years now, and I come from the left. And the right wing people in our world, this is not to say that there aren't senators who are totally legit, and there are actual right-wing people out there in the world who actually have real power and are very impressive and have played the game correctly and, yada, yada. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. But in general, on the right, on the new right, on the young right and the internet and all these people and our sphere of people, we are the losers. This is what people and right people, what hate people, they hate admitting this. They hate seeing themselves as you are the loser of this equation, right? You're not a fucking black person who got elevated to go be an Ivy League person. You're not some striver white guy who is the mayor of Minnesota. You got left behind, man. You got fucked. And you're kind of a failure. You're kind of a loser. You're kind of a fucking loser, And but what they don't realize is that's all the cultural power in the world comes from that, comes from being the loser. The reason why we're killing it right now on the right, the reason why I have a successful agency, the reason why we have all this opportunity is because we are the fucking losers. And people love the losers. I mean, I don't mean to say people love the losers. I mean to say people love a loser who is able to overcome their circumstances and make something beautiful and great anyway. And that's really what America's all about. Right. That's what fucking America is about somebody who doesn't have everything given to them, making it on their own. And we on the right now have that opportunity. And, I think we're fulfilling it in certain ways. But I don't remember what that had to do with what we were talking about. But
I don't even remember what we're talking about.
That's what I read. All right, leave us.
Thread?
Anyway, sorry. Leave us with what's the plans for Junto is. Junto, how can people write for this? Tell us.
If you go to our About section, it has all of the pitching guidelines and stuff like that. But the plans are to try to create something that I think belongs a little bit more to the moment than the existing institutions. And if in service of that, we can have people talk a little bit more and maybe learn something, that would be great. I'm under no illusion we're not going to become, this powerful National Review like force that can guide the discourse of conservatism, but we're not trying to. We're just trying to have the conversations. So if that is something that anyone out there wants to participate in, you can obviously pitch me at the email address in the About section. And I mean, the main challenge for the future is I do genuinely want to have people from across the spectrum of conservative thought. When we have a bunch of people from the new right that start to write for us, establishment people who I am friends with look at it and they're like, well, you're demeaning conservatism. Yeah. And it's like, well, actually, no. That you're supposed to be the party of intellectual debate. Like, let's have some. So that's what I want for Junto.
Yeah, I think that's really dead on. It's supposed to be the party of intellectual debate. This is where intellectual ideas can live, and that is a little bit of a new identity for the right. Again, coming out of the era of Dan Quayle, or that whole. That's what I grew up with, and that was
his book actually, which probably the only one left. It was just sitting in my house, so I still have it.
And it's like that. I came out of that, and so to me, and I think the average American thinks of the conservative as like, don't listen to bad music.
Very rigid,
right.
Square.
Yeah, but in fact, now there's a massive opportunity to be the place where people do have free debate.
Have you seen the chart of political thought? And it's like the disparate one for the right, and then on the left, like the left all has to believe in very specific things, but the right, that's basically where we're at.
Totally. All right, Philip, thank you so much. Really appreciate this. Let's stay in touch. I'm going to DM you right now. I'm going to play the music. And then, we'll talk soon, man.
Sounds good. Good chatting with you.
Peace.